Welcome to Snowbound Valley. This is a trial that is included with the free update that is part of the Season 2 bundle on SnowRunner. And if you don't want to see how to win this trial, then stop watching the video right here. Because this video will show you how to beat the trial. We'll talk about some strategies that I employed in beating the trial. So if you want to try to figure it out yourself, then well, stop watching the video. So the premise of this trial is we have two Lodestar vehicles, and watch out, we nearly tipped there. I am doing this as a voiceover. I decided it was probably easier to record the gameplay and then do a voiceover once I had a successful run on the trial. I did do this trial probably about 4 or 5 times before getting a success, and I have to say all of the failures prior to this successful run was a result of rolling a truck. So you gotta be careful, especially with the crane here. This crane is top heavy and she'll roll at the first sign of a cross breeze, so be careful. So one of the strategies that I employed with this trial was to minimize the amount of driving that I could as best as possible, because well, there's no fuel station on this trial map. The fuel you have is the fuel you have. Or should I say, the fuel that is available on the map is the fuel that is available, because there are a couple tricky spots here where you can be a little sneaky, and the developers have included a little extra gas, so to speak, if you know how to get it out of the other vehicles that are here on the map. And we'll be demonstrating that here in a little bit. But this strategy that I employed was to come short of the pipe and then extend the crane out and extend the cable out as far as I could, and basically bring the pipe to me, as opposed to driving further down into the ditch and then have to try to get up out of the ditch using even more fuel. So what we're going to do is I'm going to kind of narrate some of this, and then we're going to jump into kind of a time lapse, speed up the gameplay a little bit, where we're just driving back and forth and everything. So we're kind of going to cycle between narration and just some background music and speeding up the gameplay. What we're doing here is we're going to be backing this up kind of towards the road, and then we're going to cycle over to our other Lodestar, which is in a low saddle configuration, and we're going to use the included flatbed. You basically drive down here, get turned around, get in a position to drive this load back up to our start point, and deliver our first pipe. So at this point, it is now time to make that very first journey back up the hill, hopefully keeping this trailer on the square and flat. Now, I will say this is quite the climb, and the strategy I employed here was to engage diff lock as we get a little bit further up the hill to give the truck as much traction as possible. And inevitably, we stall out pretty much at this point on every climb up this hill. I think I don't know if that's basically designed, but it's handy that we are within winch range of that one tree. We use that tree to kind of get us winched up past the really wet, soggy bits. And then in some of the other trial attempts, I kind of swung out way wide and made the turn there, but the trailer gets real tippy. So what I learned to do was kind of cut the corner short a little bit, and that keeps the trailer fairly square. Now also be a little careful here. The trailer starts to get a little tippy here, but if you just keep powering it on through, you should be good. Now another strategy that I like to employ is to disable all-wheel drive as much as possible. If you notice the fuel consumption, you burn through a lot more fuel when you have all-wheel drive enabled than when you don't. So as long as you have a decent amount of momentum going, not running with all-wheel drive should save you some fuel in the long run. I mean, here we go. We're down to 56 gallons out of 64 in our first trip. So what we're going to do now is kind of make our way back down the hill, and then we're going to park beside the crane, I believe. Or we might go up to the next pipe. I don't remember what I did, but basically at this point we've completed the closest pipe, and the way I gathered these pipes is I basically gathered them in the order that they are close to basically our end destination, and that is because I didn't really want to be driving past the pipes in order to get the furthest pipes. I mean, that's one strategy, is to get the furthest pipes possible and then work your way back. But the way I saw that is I'd just be needlessly driving past things endlessly. So I just felt that this was going to involve less driving. But you can obviously try to employ whatever strategy you want. So we've got to go up this hill, kind of to this house area. And that's where we're going to see, what is that? That is our first free fuel. So there is a pickup truck there with 11 units of fuel. I don't know if it's gallons or liters, but there's 11 units of fuel in that truck. And once we gather the pipe from this ravine, we're going to use that to top off our crane. So we're going to get this truck positioned, turned around, and ready to kind of haul the next pipe. And then we're going to cycle over to the crane and bring it up here and basically start to winch that pipe up out of the ravine and put it back here on the trailer. So you can see there I got 11 units of fuel, back up to 43 gallons on the crane, and well, we're off to pipe number 3, and this one's going to be a bit of a journey. We've got a river that we've got to basically drive up, so it's going to be a little bit of a struggle. We have a kind of a big muddy area coming around the bend here. We also need to navigate and not get stuck on. Now, one thing that I did try really hard to make sure that I didn't do is, for whatever reason, I always seem to get bogged down right at the pretty much the same spot here in this really deep snowed area. But handily, there is a fallen tree that we can crane to. Here, if we use the side winch point, we can crane to this, or winch to this fallen tree. Now, what I want to do is I want to make sure that I don't drive over that tree and basically cause it to vanish, because that tree is going to be essential in us being able to get to and from this part of the map going forward. And we've got one more pipe to get after this one. We gotta be real careful here. This was a spot where I tipped the crane in one of my attempts, so be real careful, kind of getting turned up and positioned up to go up the river here. And going up the river can be a little precarious because there are some large boulders. Get yourself kind of a little off kilter and possibly quickly turn the truck also. So we're gonna go ahead and drive up here, hook up to the pipe, and then drive it down the river. We're definitely not going to be trying to bring the flatbed up this river road. There's going to be no way we're going to get it turned around and brought back down with the fuel that we have available to us. So we're kind of using the crane as our transport vehicle for these last 2 pipes. We're going to go get them and bring them back to the road. So once again, we can minimize the actual driving that we're doing with the other semi. Almost done. We've got 3 pipes now transported back to our destination, and it's getting dark. Now, I tried to fast forward time to get it back to daylight, but that is another aspect of this trial, is that you cannot change the time. So that is another thing. You're going to be wanting to kind of get through this as quick as possible, as safe as possible, because, well, you definitely don't want to be doing this in the middle of the night. Now, we're heading over here to this tunnel because, well, you can see there's another pickup truck stashed away over here with, that's right, another 11 units of fuel that we can borrow, so to speak. Let's go ahead and grab that. We'll refuel our Paystar here just a little bit, get her back up to 34 gallons out of 64, so about half of a tank. And we're going to end up using about we use about 20 gallons of fuel getting this last pipe. So really handy to have those vehicles that we can borrow the fuel from. And once again, we're going to basically make our way down the river to the pipe, grab it with the crane, keep it as low as possible in front of us so that we don't have too high a center of gravity, and drive it back up here to the road, at which time we're going to bring our semi down. And a strategy that I employed with this last pipe was to basically drive the pipe as close to the unload point as possible with the crane. And basically, I felt that the fuel that I had left on the crane was free fuel to burn, so let's burn it as much as possible, and as a result, saving the fuel in the semi, because I wasn't going to refill that, and I was kind of worried about taking fuel out of this Lodestar, possibly causing it to fail the mission if it basically detected that either vehicle was out of fuel. So I didn't want to empty this Lodestar for the sake of putting fuel in the other truck. So I wanted to keep that kind of in reserve. That way we didn't accidentally fail the mission because of maybe some logic built into the task. So we've pretty much stalled out our drive with the crane here in this, again, the same general location of this one part of the road. So we're going to cycle back to our semi Lodestar, and we're going to use that And the strategy that I employed, or was wanting to employ, was I was going to drive this Lodestar and basically position it directly in front of, nose to nose, to the crane, and then at that point extend the boom hopefully over this truck and basically place the pipe on the flatbed, and at that point back up the flatbed and drive it up the hill. But that didn't quite work out. Boom isn't long enough to extend over the truck and its long frame to get to the flatbed. So ultimately I had to kind of pull up alongside the crane with the truck to then get the load on the flatbed. I toyed with the idea, I mentioned earlier, I toyed with the idea of refueling this truck, which is down to just 24 gallons, with fuel from the crane. But I stopped because it looked like I could only pull 15 gallons out of the Lodestar, and that's all the fuel it had left in it. And I didn't want to risk losing the trial because of some logic built into the trial to basically identify if either vehicle was out of fuel, then fail the trial. So I didn't want to do that. So I just left the fuel that was in the crane there, and ultimately I figured I had enough fuel, having 20-some gallons left in the tank, that I would be able to get back up the hill and as a result complete the trial without having to really try to pull any fuel out of the crane. And at this point, pretty much the tale has been said. We've got 13 gallons left. Easy driving to finish this loadout. That, guys, is how you finish the Snowbound Valley trial on the Season 2 update of SnowRunner. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, please go ahead and click that like button. Let me know in the comments, what strategies did you employ to successfully win Snowbound Valley? And until next time, keep those wheels on the ground.